Wasabi guys, coming back at you with another top 10 list. This time we're going to go into colors again for Cube. This time it's going to be the top 10 blue cards in Cube. Now keep in mind these are all cards that I would consider putting in a cube. They're not necessarily the most powerful cards, so if you don't see something like Ancestral Recall, Time Walk, Time Twister, or Mana Drain, it's most likely because those cards are super expensive, and if you put them into a cube, it's most likely going to force you to balance the cube out in a way that's going to cost you thousands of dollars, or it's not going to be worth it over time unless you have the money to afford it. Most people don't, so just for reference here, the cards on this list are under $100, so they are not super affordable, but they are way more affordable in consideration compared to the Power 9. So, here we go. Number 10, Counterspell. The reason why it's only number 10 is because counterspells in Cube are just, they're so iffy. It's kind of difficult when you play the counterspell game, especially when you're drafting. You usually see cards like Counterspell. They're very good, and obviously 2-mana counterspells are, they're a thing of the past. We're never going to see them again in standard at all. So whenever you have a cube draft, these are usually some of the last cards that stay in the draft towards the end, and they're usually one of the last cards to get picked up. Not the very last, but they're towards the last when it comes to cards being drafted, just because they're so specifically towards the type of blue player that's going to be countering, and counterspells depend on consistency, card advantage, and just control. And in cube, control doesn't do that well, as opposed to just disruption and precision. It's a good answer still, so it's why it's number 10, but counterspells and cube just don't typically do that well unless they're efficient and they can just straight up counter something. So I would definitely put it over Force of Will, because Force of Will, there's not that many combo cards, there's not many threats in cube that warrant having a 0-mana counterspell in it. So while it is one of the better counterspells, Force of Will isn't as necessary. It's definitely overkill in this type of format, whereas straight up a 2-mana counterspell definitely holds its own weight. Number 9, I have Vendilion Click. Now, I said disruption is very good, and this is another reason why. Anytime you can disrupt someone's strategies, and yeah, they get the card draw to replenish their hand, but you're still most likely taking out the best card in their hand, and having that on flash and getting the creature and getting a flying creature at flash speed while also being able to do that. Very few cards actually give you hand disruption at instant speed, and that's why Vendilion Click is one of the better blue cards, and it's easy ton of play outside of cube, and it holds its own weight in cube as well. Number 8, Kirra Great Glass Spinner. Now, answers are a very big part about cube, and in particular targeting removal. Anytime you can remove the biggest problem creature on the field, it's always important to do that. However, Kirra solves that problem, so you have to double up on removal. Anytime you force your opponent to double up on removal, it makes it so much more difficult. They're spending more mana just to get rid of Kirra. Even if they do get rid of her, they still have to deal with whatever else you have on the field. So I like her because she's not necessarily a control card, and blue is typically viewed as the control color. Kirra can be thrown into any combination of colors if you're playing blue that's creature dependent, which a lot of decks that you construct out of cubes definitely depend on creatures, and Kirra's a great protection card, and there's not too many like her, so definitely play her. Number 7, Treachery. Now, of all the gain control target creature cards that you could possibly put in a cube, Treachery is easily the best because you're basically doing it for free. You untap up to 5 lands, and gaining control of a creature for basically free in any format is going to be awesome, which is why Treachery is one of the best blue cards that you can put in a cube here. It's all about who has the biggest creature in a format like this, where you just have good value creatures, not necessarily just the super flashy ones, but the ones that have the good keywords, the ones that have the good power toughness for the mana cost. So definitely, if you can gain control of the best creature on the board, you're most likely putting yourself in a position to win. Number 6, I have Bribery. Treachery is good for gaining control of creatures. Bribery is good for getting the very best creature from your opponent's deck and just absolutely ruining their strategy, their win cons. So yeah, they could kill it, bring it back to their graveyard, try to recur it if they have that type of strategy going, which is kind of hard to depend on something as specific as that in this format to recover from something like a Bribery. Taking control of the best creature in someone's deck, most likely they've drafted something just great values, maybe something like a Wormcoil Engine or a Titan, who knows. Definitely something worth looking into. If you're scared of blue, maybe because consistency problems in Cube or just the limited type of format in general, Bribery is definitely one of those cards that you should play. It's so awesome, just gaining control, just stealing something from your opponent's deck. For them, they're most likely depending on winning with a specific creature, or at least gaining a huge advantage because they have an awesome creature, and taking it for just 5 mana. That's just awesome. Number 5, Snapcaster Mage. Now, I showed you two pretty good cards in Bribery and Treachery. Now, being able to replay cards like that, it's awesome. And obviously you can go off color, other instants and sorceries. It's just one of the best creatures in blue for a reason, because being able to recast instants and sorceries, yeah, they get exiled after you recast it, but still, you get a body, it's at instant speed, so you have the benefit of doing it at your own time. I mean, it's an amazing creature, and it belongs in everybody's cubes. It's great. Number 4, I have Tinker. Now, a lot of people would argue this is one of the most powerful blue cards, but in Cube, I put it up 4, maybe not higher, probably because, you have to build an artifact build, of course, but if you do, if you have a cube that is adjusted to allow artifact builds, it's definitely going to be one of the most powerful cards in your cube. It's busted as hell. Taking something like, maybe like a Signet, sacking it, getting like a Blightsteel Colossus, or even a Wormcoil Engine, or a Steel Hellkite, it's always going to be worth it. And the cheat into play type of effects are always busted, but you have to give them props when they're due. You have to accept the fact it's just an awesome card. Definitely, cheaply cost a card. Oh, sacrificing is supposed to make up for the cheap mana cost, but it really doesn't. Number 3, I have Ponder. Ponder allows you to look at the top 3 cards of your library. If you don't like it, you can shuffle it, and obviously, after you're done that, you can draw the card. It's a good effect. Card manipulation, card draw manipulation is always going to be a big deal no matter what format you're in. And being able to look at the top 3 and say, I don't like these at all, I'm just going to shuffle and see if I get a better draw. That's always good. So, cantrips are great and you can't go wrong, which is why number 2 is Preordain. I just think it's a step above Ponder, maybe just a little step, but it's still a step above it. Scrying 2 and then drawing is, in my opinion, better. It just is to me. I just like scrying, the ability to basically look at the top 2. I like this card. Well, I don't like the other one. I don't want to have to draw that one. I put it at the bottom. Or I don't like any of these, and I put them at the bottom, and I don't have to worry about drawing them again. For a long time, at least. So, Preordained to me, it's very subjective to some people, but to me, it's just that much better. In cantrips, you can't really go wrong. Obviously, if you have something like a Brainstorm, to me, I just don't think there's enough hand disruption to justify something like a Brainstorm. There are cards like Thoughtseize that you could put in here, but to me, Brainstorm is usually just protection against those type of cards that you don't see too many of to justify playing it. It's still a decent cantrip in its own right, but again, it's just on here. And Ancestral Recall is just too expensive. I wasn't going to put it on here. The number 1 best blue card that you can put in Cube is just such a dominating force here. Jase the Mind Sculptor, 1v1, 40 card decks. Plus is great, 0 is great, the minus is great, the alt is great. 1v1, it's just, he's just such a powerhouse. That's why he got banned in Modern. He's so great. You plus to just manipulate your opponent's draw. You can control whether or not they get a good card or just a completely crappy one. And having that is just going to win you so many games in its own right. And the 0 is just Brainstorm. So right there, you have card draw if you want it. And the minus, return a creature to its owner's hand, just unsummon there. And then as old as exile cards from target player's library. I mean, honestly, did you think there was going to be something else number one? He's just such a good card. I mean, I just think that people have forgotten about his power and just this type of setting. Just 1v1 is just such a dominating force and definitely deserves to be number one on this list. And a great consideration for anybody's cube in blue. Doesn't necessarily have to be a control build to play a card like Jase. Just so awesome. So that's it, guys. That's it for this installation of top 10 cube cards. Stay tuned for more videos like these. Check out my other top 10s. I do them for Commander as well. Anyway, guys, signing off. Void Mage Gamer here. Have a wonderful day.